Hey YouTubers, I'm just hanging out here at the condo and wrapping up the last of my weekend. This is Sunday for me, even though it's Thursday for everybody else. And did a little gardening today. Um, my green mulch here, or the alfalfa that I was growing in there, was getting a little too tall. So I chopped it down and then set the alfalfa down on the soil surface. Had to work it down in there because it's pretty wild in there. And then I had a bolted romaine lettuce back there, which I chopped and dropped as well. And those things will break down and provide more nitrogen to the soil. So, and then I had more mulch that I put on the the one around the corner. And the cool thing about mulch is that that it prevents it slows down evaporation from the soil, and when the sun strikes the soil directly, it sort of sterilizes the top layer of soil because sun does that. But if you have mulch, that will act as sort of like a sunshade. Plus, another cool thing is I had a few little slugs on that mulch, but it wasn't doing any harm because basically they were just there, and the only thing I'm growing around the corner is peas, and they don't really climb up the pea plant and do any damage, but they do act to break down the mulch into soil, adding nitrogen to the soil and all that good stuff. And earlier today I saw a bird in there, and he was digging through the mulch and he was eating little bugs and things, and possibly a few of those little miniature slugs. And if that's the case, whenever a bird eats anything, he also evacuates, let's put it that way, and that adds nitrogen, high nitrogen fertilizer to the soil surface. So that improves the soil. And that is new compost made in 2010 in that planter. And basically, if I continue to put organic matter on the surface, the soil surface, it's quite possible that I might never really run this soil out. It might never really go bad, or at least it'll last a lot longer because I'm constantly adding what the soil is using up. And I'm not really doing it through just artificial fertilizer. I'm doing it through mulch the way it works in nature for the most part. Let's see. Yeah, did a lot of chopping and whatnot on that mulch and dropping, and on all of these planters. But I'm still probably going to throw away the soil in that planter and the one behind the tomatoes over there. And then I'll replace it with the compost that I'm producing or in the process of building right now in these tomato planters. Then, of course, at the end of the season, I'm going to chop the tomato plants down and throw them down on top, and they will be a layer of mulch as well. In the past, I've actually taken the tomato plants away and throw them away, which was a bad idea because you're losing soil nutrients. Oh, look at that. There's a wasp in my garden running around looking for bugs to eat. That's always good. Well, that is the garden so far today. Went and got some glasses, as you can see. And I just wanted to cover what I'm saving for. I'm saving about $1,500 a month, roughly, that I'm putting in basically in reserve for the house on an acre lot that I want. Now, this is what I want. This is ideal, of course. I'd like about 4 to 6 bedrooms, some for projects, some to actually rent out to other people who are sort of like-minded. People who are into permaculture, man, if they had a permaculture design certificate, that'd be even better. I'd like about a 1 acre lot. I want a slope behind the house so that I can put in some swaling and maybe a little bit of to basically catch and store water, which is one of the principles of permaculture. I want to build a rocket mass heater system in the first floor somewhere so that the heating bills will be less expensive. I'd like to put solar panels on the roof first for water, because you get the biggest bang for your buck heating up hot water. And then the second is electricity. And then I can have like possibly grid tied with a reserve system with a bunch of batteries on a shelf, possibly similar to what Yankee Prepper has. I should be able to do that. I'm a diesel mechanic. I'd also like rain catchment from the gutters and all that good stuff, and that way I would have a backup water supply, and I could irrigate with that, and I wouldn't have to pay a water bill, and I would have fluoride-free water as well. Another thing I would like is a sort of a pond feature, sort of a water feature out front, and this is going to be south of the house. And basically in the winter time, the sun is at a low angle, especially up here in the north, and it'll bounce off the pond and then go straight inside, and then of course the light from the sun will go directly inside, decreasing my heating bills. Now, of course, in the summertime, the sun is straight up, but everybody knows this stuff. The sun is straight up and it hits the pond, and then it takes off back up into space. And it doesn't, and then of course the eaves of the house are such that not very much sun will get into the house as well. And in the winter time also, I would like a couple of evergreen trees. I know they're allelopathic and they have a tendency to sort of poison the ground in a short area around them, but they also have a feature of keeping those dark pine needles on the leaves or on the branches even in the winter. And when that happens, basically the sun comes in at an angle and it'll bounce off of that off of the big mass here, and it will reflect down onto the house. Not as much as with the pond, but basically it will reflect down, and that will also act to bring heat into the house. So, and then of course there will be a slope. I think I mentioned that. And if I could put in some swales, maybe even some kind of miniature pond or two, that would be pretty awesome. Then I could have like a couple of floating gardens, and I could possibly even raise a little bit of fish that way. Whenever you raise anything in an aquatic environment, it doesn't have to support its own weight. So it tends to be vastly more productive than land-based systems. And then of course I'd have the chickens for the eggs, and I would have a lot of built-in perennial plantings to to produce food, things like that for barter and whatnot. I'm not really expecting a total horrendous SHTF, in a year or two when things start getting bad. I'm expecting something more like what happened in Argentina, or maybe what's happening in Greece, or Iceland. In those areas, things went bad, and there was a lot of badness, and there is, and but it never really got to the point of the road wear. So basically, a situation like this, I would like it fairly close to the city so that I could continue my career as a diesel mechanic. And then I would also like a way to produce products and goods and food and whatnot on site. And the cool thing about producing a lot of these things, once you have the systems in place to produce these things, they don't really cost that much to maintain. Solar panels last quite a while, especially in this environment. It's not really super duper hot around here, and you don't get 9 feet of snow either. But so basically, so then I would be able to just like produce a lot of that stuff, and I wouldn't have to constantly be paying for it. I do hope to retire someday, and if I have all of these systems in place, I won't need to depend on a failing retirement system in order to make ends meet, since I'll be able to produce a lot of this stuff myself. Now, there is a key thing in here that I am concerned about, but I think I have a plan that I'll be able to take care of it. That is, um, well, you can't really depend on family these days that much, especially not like marriage and all that, due to the way, the failure rate and the marriage laws and all that nastiness. But I'm thinking of going with roommates instead. People who are into permaculture, into preparedness, and people who want to like sort of decrease their tax footprint and their expense footprint, and want to live in a place that's sort of a functioning homestead. Um, so basically, I think I'll make a second video on that, my plans for that. I'm still working on it. It's sort of a sketch, but this video is getting too long. So, later.